I am super happy to have back with me once again Justin Ford, safety expert. Oh, I tell you what, Justin, I just saw that David Angotti is talking about his new position as chief evangelist at Guesty. Why aren't you chief evangelist, safety evangelist at
Yeah,
Broadcom? It's a great title.
I appreciate that. I've actually talked to my boss about a couple title changes. He says he's marinating on it, so we'll see where that goes.
I just thought, okay, chief evangelist. That really
Yeah.
sort of means. I mean, does it mean something and nothing? I'm not sure. We
Yeah.
we shall take
I
it as it
don't.
comes.
I'm happy for David Angotti. I'm good with not having that title, but I'm happy for David.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much for joining me, Justin. We're talking about the Vacation Rental Management Association conference and our takeaways from it. And I'd been talking about mine and what I got from it and the people I met and networked with. And then I came across a post by you on LinkedIn, which really resonated with me. And I'm going to read a little bit verbatim here. You said if you didn't attend the VRMA conference in Orlando last week and relied on all the posts you've seen on LinkedIn about it, you'd think all we talked about was AI.
Yeah.
And you go on to say it's apparent there's an essential perspective that hasn't received much attention. The critical challenges our industry is currently facing, which can't be solved by AI. The three concerns I see are insurance, regulations, and safety. So I wanted to get you on here and put forward your
Yeah.
position on this because I completely agree with everything you said in that post. So I want you to share it with the audience today.
I appreciate that. And certainly, AI is important and AI does have its role in there. And I do give, a lot of accolades to, Brookfiles with Vintory and Wheelhouse. They're doing a great job and you're doing a great job talking about owner acquisition. And certainly that's important. But we have some serious threats in our industry. I was in the Gulf Coast recently and I was working with a rental company down there. And I was due to come back the next morning for training. And I said to the gentleman, could we get started at 8? And he said, yeah, it's going to take me a little while to get here. And I said, well, why's that? And he said, well, because I live an hour away. I went, you live an hour away from here? And he goes, yeah, everybody does. Everyone who works at this company lives an hour away. We're all inland. And I said, wow. He goes, yeah, around here, there's only two types of people who own homes. People who have two jobs and people who have two homes and people who have two jobs that have real estate. That really resonated with me. It's a huge problem that we have in our industry when it comes to regulations and all these fights that are coming up. Is in our industry, we don't even have our employees living in our markets to vote and support and help what we need to do with advocacy. And I think that's kind of where we've got to go back to and start with this industry.
Yeah, exactly. And I know this from what's happening in my neck of the woods, up in Ontario, and certainly what happened in BC recently with short-term rentals being banned altogether, cities of 10,000 or more. And regardless of the fact that some of those cities are vacation towns like Kelowna, it's a tourist destination. And I'm seeing companies being decimated because they from March of 2024 they won't be able to rent anymore. And big issue. But let's step back a bit and just talk about for a bit the conference itself
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and and what your thoughts on it were overall.
We're pretty shiny looking industry right now. I remember seeing you at conferences back before 2010. You could talk to everybody who was there. And now when we're at these conferences, there's a blending of people that we haven't really seen before. It's kind of been happening the last year or two, but we really saw it. I can't tell you how many people I talked to that said I have one property or two properties, and there they were doing a lot of research with the intent of growth. And the focus in our industry used to be that you had 100, 150 properties or more. You came to the conference and you looked down upon that. You said, oh, those guys, they don't belong here. And a couple of years ago, as you know, the VRMA said, we're going to let the smaller people sign up. Well, they're there and they're smart. They were bringing in voices and thoughts on our industry that we haven't heard before, and I think we can all learn a lot from them.
Yeah, totally agree. And I remember being at a VRMA a couple of years ago. I think that was when they first started inviting the smaller companies in. 4, 5, even less.
Yeah.
And there was a reception and I was at that reception for them, and the excitement that they had, the motivation was palpable. And some of the people I talked to at this event in Orlando, who were at that one, they are now doing that growth. They're going through that growth phase, and they are savvy. I met one young guy. I don't know whether you came across him, and I can't remember his name. I will find it and put his information on the show notes. He was 23 years old. He'd starting a company in New York State, and he was there to just take everything on board. And every time I saw him, he was animatedly talking to different people, just taking on the information. And when I spoke to him, he said he wanted to talk to the people who'd been in the industry a long time.
Yeah.
He wanted to talk to the old timers, the old guard, because they had the experience. And that was wonderful, coming from somebody of that age, right, that was interested in learning from that experience, as well as just driving forward with what's new.
I can't even imagine. I think I met that guy, and I met another one like him from working in the Washington, D.C. market. Young, excited. I've got 2 listings right now, but my goal is to have 30 by the end of the month. And you're like, wow, holy smokes. And could you imagine? I mean, you and I have both been in the industry a long time. I won't age us, but I know that we were both at least, before 2010 at conferences. And could you imagine that we could have walked into a conference and gotten some of the big players to basically open up all their secrets and tell us how they got there? And now that's there. That playbook is wide open because of the different great software. I mean, we saw so many incredible technologies that are there at the conference. You can now go up, and a company like Guesty or Streamline or any of these softwares, they're so well seasoned, which they weren't when you and I started. Some of them didn't even exist, that they're now able to help quickly accelerate growth for someone who's starting out new. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. What I like as well is that some of those companies are out there creating space for those very small operators.
Yes.
It's not a case of we're not interested in you unless you've got 100 properties. It's, I've seen the rise of owner-res from a company that was just dealing with owner operators to now really making their claim to the space.
And, I embrace those guys. The guy from New York you're talking about, the one I met from one, I embrace them because the reason they're at that conference is they want to be professional. They are good for our industry. That is who we want to see grow, is someone who's coming to a conference that wants to do the right thing. They want to be a good operator. They want to represent our industry at a professional level. And that's a lot of, what we've been focused on over at Breezeway as well. So it's good. And I want to help them too. I'm happy to see them grow.
So in your post, you talked about the 3 elements. You talked about safety, insurance, and regulations. And you said if we don't have insured owners, a market left to operate in, or you have a safety incident in a property, you're not going to be in business anyway. So let's just address these 3 issues that at the conference that they were out there in the seminar rooms. They were not as well attended as we mentioned at the beginning, as some of the what was the word you used? Flashy topics like.
Yeah, you didn't hear too much. I mean, in my slide presentation, I kind of talk about what I see AI doing to help safety, but it's a 3-second mention. Tiffany Edwards led a panel discussion at the same time I did with a boot camp on Sunday on safety. And, I peeked in her room and I knew what I had in my room. It was light attendance. But when you look at regulations, advocacy, what, rent responsibly, or what different organizations are trying to do, we've got some real challenges there. And it's not just a case of writing a check. I go back to that comment I made at the beach. It's either people with 2 jobs or people with 2 homes. Our industry's kind of taken on a position right now of let's give money to the people with 2 homes, the lawyers, to fight for us, versus giving money and trying to build housing and get our employees back in our markets. So there's a lot of discussion to be had. And when you're looking at the fact that Bozeman, Montana just voted that they want to get rid of vacation rentals. Yesterday, the state of Colorado just said, hey, you know what? we're going to call it vacation rentals commercial. It hasn't had the final vote yet. They're going to vote on it in January. But to even get to that level, and now your property taxes are going to quadruple. You're paying $7,000, now you're going to pay $28,000. That's a huge threat to our industry. And then the other one is the economic impact studies. And advocacy is focused on this. This is one of the things we're supposed to be raising money for, but we're not doing a good enough job yet. And now we just saw a case in Nantucket in Massachusetts where someone who's against vacation rentals, short-term rentals, get out ahead of us. And they did their own impact study and said, hey, guess what? Short-term rentals don't do anything for the island. We don't need them. And here's the proof. And that's now the leading headline story for Nantucket, not us getting ahead of it and saying vacation rentals are important. So raising money, creating that awareness, there isn't a state or a county right now that isn't discussing. And of course, from where you're from in Canada, the provinces, British Columbia, that big Airbnb fire that they had in Montreal has certainly got everybody talking up there. There is a tremendous amount of regulations looking at coming at us, and we are not yet armed to fight for it. We've got a little bit of help and a little bit of hope, but not when we're not filling the rooms up with people that get that this is serious.
Yes, but this has been going on for so long. I remember when, oh gosh, how many years have they been pushing advocacy at VRMA and having the lackluster response. So what's it going to take to get people to really understand that this is going to impact them in a big way?
You're from Canada, and I love one of the things I talk about you with this, but I also talk about with Canadians. Canadians generally as a society are more forward thinking. Hey, if I don't change this light bulb that's at 700 hours, it's going to burn out tomorrow. They're only good for 700 hours. Generally speaking, here in America, we wait till the light bulb's burned out and it's been out for 2 weeks and we've tripped and fallen and finally go, all right, I guess I got to replace that light bulb. And that's what we're doing in this industry right now. We're all just kind of waiting. It almost seems like it's too big. Like advocacy and regulation seem so big. But the big players in this industry, boy, do they get really loud. And I think of, Jody Rafosco and her team in Maryland 2 years ago. Their state fire marshal said, hey, we need sprinklers in all your properties. And I love Jody and Joe, and they're great. But until that point, it hadn't been a threat. And then all of a sudden, they had to react quickly. And so when we look at that and see how quickly you do have to react when these issues come up, it should be a huge wake-up call. You're not immune to it. And we have to take on this idea that this is, yes, a very big problem, but we need to get the solution and we need to have a plan in place now. And it's not just a couple $1 million. This is more than a couple $1 million problem, and we've got to put more at it.
Well, we're going to come back in a minute and talk about the virtual summit that Rent Responsibly is going to be the virtual. Did I say virtual summit? Rent
virtual summit.
Will be holding next month, and we'll come back to that in a second. But I want to cover the other two issues that you mentioned were sort of almost sidelined in Orlando. One of which was safety, but let's talk about insurance, because that's another big one. And insurance is not a sexy topic, for anybody, but it's such a paramount topic now.
There was a gentleman walking around with an accent, a UK accent similar to yours. I know you're originally from the UK, and I don't think many people picked up on who he was, but he was there from Lloyd's of London. And if you didn't get a chance to talk to the guy from Lloyd's from London there, you missed a huge opportunity. He was there because Lloyd's of London's paying close attention. They back a lot of the biggest insurers in our industry, including Proper. So when you've got insurance companies that are getting out of our industry, that should be cause for alarm. When I first started doing vacation rentals in 1997, you could walk into a State Farm, an Allstate. There were companies like Vermont, Life, Holyoke. They would go, oh, you got a vacation rental? Sure, we'll insure that. Not a problem. And they didn't question it. You can't do that anymore. There's very few companies that are willing to take on that risk. And then even the ones that take on that risk said, oh, there's been a wildfire near you in the last 10 years. We're not going to insure that. Down in Florida, If you want to go buy a vacation rental as an investment property right now, and you are going to get a mortgage to do it, you're going to get bank financing. The bank wants proof of insurance. You can't get the insurance coverage as an invested property because of all the hurricanes. It's a huge problem down there. There are people who can't invest in short-term rentals right now because they can't get insured. And so that should be a big wake-up call. What are we going to do when insurance companies go, you know what, vacation rentals are too much of a risk, we're not going to insure them? What are we going to do? What's the plan? Because that's happening. It's happening very quickly.
And so what should people do who are worried about this? Where
Yeah.
do they go? Who do they talk to?
And I want to just quickly give a statement. I know sometimes being an alarmist makes people turn everything off, and I'm not trying to be an alarmist. I'm just
Justin, we love your alarmist.
Yeah.
But statement.
But, I see this stuff. What we need to be doing is taking a look at creating our own fund. And I think that's a solution. And I know some of the leading insurance companies are doing that. But we need to create our own fund within this industry that says, if we do these certain things, we're willing to insure these properties. And we should be taking a look at doing that as an organization. Other companies, other industries have done things like that in the past. And I know that, and we'll segue this into safety if that's okay. Mm-hmm. I know that, for example, the safety program that we've been doing with Proper Insurance now for 4 years, we're coming actually up on the 5th year anniversary. They're not seeing safety incidents from properties when they've adhered to all the safety stuff. They're not even seeing a tree fall on the house because that focus on safety is pulling those homeowners in line. And then they're avoiding what are called shock losses. It's the shock losses that the industry doesn't want. They can be going along happily, everything's great. And then a vacation rental burns down in the Outer Banks, 3 people are killed, 3 people are in a burn unit. That's a multi-million-dollar shock loss to whatever insurance company's involved. And that's not worth it for them because that just wiped out all their profits. One house, one incident. If that house had been prepared better, that wouldn't have happened. So as our industry, if we say, you know what, we're going to set standards, we're going to adhere to these standards, and now we can afford to insure those standards, we might be able to keep pushing forward okay with that.
So how are you bringing people on board? I know you're doing, there's just you're everywhere. And just not just here, you're down in Costa Rica, you're all over the US. It's got to take more than you.
Yeah, it is.
What's the solution?
I haven't figured that out. I like your son a lot, though. I know your son, Mike, has certainly been helpful. People are getting it. Companies are getting it. There's a couple vacation rental companies that aren't in business right now because they had a safety incident. And I appreciated, some of the software companies, the PMS software companies have said, hey, Justin, can you come talk? Because we just realized we lost 2 of our customers. And when we said, why are you leaving us? It's because they had a fire death in their properties and now they're not our customer anymore. So we better talk about safety at our user conference. And that's great. But yeah, you're right. We've got, I don't know if my voice is so big, it's not letting anyone else in, and I'm sorry. That's not what I'm trying to do. We definitely need, and I appreciate Eric Thibodeau with Safer VRs. He's certainly been a voice as well. But we've got to really take a hard look at this because everybody else gets it. The insurance companies, I spend more time now presenting to code enforcement officers and fire marshals around the globe than I do vacation managers. And it's because they're trying to figure out how to do this too. And we've got to make sure we balance that out. It's definitely a very important topic.
So if you had one message to give to operators and property managers right now about safety, what would that be?
It's a 2-part message. We are eroding the trust of our customers. The evening news, 6 o'clock news, is not a story about a person having a great vacation. It's about yet another fire, another person falling down the stairs. We are eroding that trust. You need to make safety the core foundation of your company. It has to be true. And you can't just say it. I'm watching people right now that are going, yeah, we're committed to safety. And then you look and the smoke alarm's dangling off the ceiling. No, you're not. You can't just say it. You've got to make it a practice of life and operations. Unfortunately, a lot of companies are doing it. Robin Cragen has been a huge advocate. We've gone in and worked with him in Colorado. You've got to do the same thing. You've got to say we're having a safety month. We're going to have a safety policy. We're going to have a safety manager. We care about safety because we can't afford to have incidents in this industry. It doesn't even matter if Robin is doing absolutely everything he needs to do in Steamboat and Breckenridge. If there's another fire in the Outer Banks, that's the nightly evening news. And now he has to fight that much harder. We're hurting all of each other when we're letting one part of us not address it. So get on board, start your company again with safety at the core.
And where do they get this information? If
Well,
somebody's up and coming and thinking, well, I haven't really thought about safety yet, and I'm pretty sure I'm there, but how do I figure out if I am there? What's involved in a safety week?
yeah, so what we did at Breezeway is we put together all the regs. We made a user manual. It wasn't easy. There's international building code. There's international residential code. There's international electrical code. Then there's the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Council and a similar organization in Canada that mandates how bunk beds and cribs and hot tub covers go on and pool safety fences. And then we've got great leaders in our industry like Proper Insurance who said, hey, here's the data. 83% of our claims are slips, trips, and falls. So we've compiled all that together and said, you do these things, and we're not talking about putting an inflatable rubber ball around your guests. We're just saying if you do all these things, you're going to minimize the likelihood of a safety incident. It's not hard to do. And once you do that, you're a good community player. You're someone who people in your community are going to go, hey, we haven't heard any problems over there. Those guys are great. They line the trash up. We don't have parking issues. Everything goes good. And we've put it all into the Breezeway Safety Course. And the Breezeway Safety Course is free for all VRMA members. It's free for a lot of the other organizational members as well as Breezeway customers. Otherwise, it's $350, 3 to 6 hours online. You do this course. We get you certified. We have elevated your awareness of what safety is that you need to do. And when you think about it, 3 to 6 hours is nothing. If you want to go load baggage on an airplane for Southwest Airlines, you got to have 2 weeks of safety training. So this is a very short, focused course that can make sure that you can help prevent these issues from happening.
Yeah, you mentioned quite a few things there, and there's just one thing that sort of reminded me that of something that we did when I was running Cottage Link Rental Management, is that I think whether it came from you, I'm not sure, and it was just a simple thing that I found the recall site for Canadian for products in Canada.
Yeah.
And it's just simple. We used to check that once a month.
Yeah.
Go into that recall site and it could have been, I don't think there were smoke alarms on there, but I remember there being stair gates.
Yeah.
Baby gates. And we went out to every owner and said, if you've got this baby gate, then you need to return it, and because there's a recall. And that was just such a simple thing to do.
It is so simple. There's 2 vacation rental companies in our industry right now that are fighting massive lawsuits over deaths in elevators. And they were both in elevators that had been recalled a number of years ago, received significant press, but they didn't address it. And now they may not survive. So there's good examples of where put someone on your team, even if you're a one-person company, when you're sitting down and having a cup of coffee in the morning, quickly browse that site, because yes, almost weekly there is some item that's in our vacation rentals that's recalled for some safety issue.
I'll make a note of that. I will put the links to those recall sites, and I've got the Canadian one. I will find the US one as well and put them on the show notes, because, as I say, simple thing to do. And another thing I remember, it's probably coming from you, was about hot tubs and having instructions and guidelines clearly posted by the hot tub. Because, for a liability, if there's a liability claim, if it was a claim for hot tub folliculitis, which we had a couple of occasions, and we were able to point directly back to the guidelines that simply said, if there is foam in the tub, or if it's discolored or smells odd, you stop using it.
Yeah.
And we were able to sidestep any claim by just referring to that and other things that we put in place for hot tub use. So just another.
Those signs are important. While we're filming this, we've just had the tragic news of Matthew Perry, who was a big television star, passing away in a hot tub. Mm-hmm. But that highlights over 300 people a year die in hot tubs. And you got to talk to the doctor and make sure you don't have heart issues, and you shouldn't be in a hot tub more than 15 minutes. Those are both issues that we know that have happened in that case. But you've got to have that sign there to let your renters know. They may not think about that or know it. They don't have a hot tub at home. They never crossed their mind that, wow, wait a minute, I shouldn't be in here longer than 15 minutes, and I do have a heart issue. I better call the doc and make sure it's okay. If you don't warn them about that, then you're liable. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize, how liable they can be and how they can offset that liability by being very upfront with the issues that, and I guess it comes back to being the chief frightener.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that was discussed at the conference in the back rooms and occasionally in the bars, and I didn't realize, I knew it was a little bit, but not as big as it was, but how many managers in North Carolina right now have been contacted by a law firm that wants them to testify against one of their peers in North Carolina because of a safety incident. And it was interesting. I was able to see, a couple of them came up to me. They're like, yeah, this law firm wants to pay me $200 to testify against this company that had a death at one of their properties. I'm like, don't do that. That's in your market. You don't want to testify. They're like, well, $200. I'm like, well, I just was talking to this other guy who's down the road from you. They offered him $1,000. So it's interesting to note when you get into these conferences that people are getting contacted by law firms, and they want them to stand up and help them win these cases because there's so many of them. So a lot of people learned about that at the conference, certainly too, and that wasn't obviously on the agenda.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I don't want to keep you any longer, Justin. Let's just go back to the Rent Responsibly virtual summit. You said everyone in this industry should attend it, and it's free. Anything else you want to mention about it?
Yeah, we're proud at Breezeway. We give money to Rent Responsibly, and I know a lot of other companies do. We need to keep doing that because they're helping the small players and organizations. I'm going to a conference next week as well for the Vermont Short-Term Rental Alliance. They're funded by Rent Responsibly and help fight regulations. And a lot of VRMA members have properties, Killington, Stowe, in Vermont. So all these different organizations, they're supporting and helping fight these regulations. It's important you understand, and they're bringing on some of the best speakers in the industry. You're going to pick up tips that will help you run your business better. That time of year, we're leading into Christmas. Things are slowing down. There's no reason you shouldn't be tuned in and fully paying attention to what's happening. And I'm excited that I'll be presenting at that along with my peer, Corinne Oki from VRMA, who, by the way, has just joined the VRMA board. Congratulations to Corinne.
Yep. Congratulations, Corinne. I'll be seeing you at the Women's Summit. No doubt.
Yes.
So the Rent Responsibly Virtual Summit is the 12th and 13th of December.
In December, yep.
And that's virtual, and that comes right on the heels of the Vacation Rental Women's Summit and the DARM conference, which are in Nashville the week before. So, get on that conference circuit, whether it's heading there face-to-face or virtual.
Yeah.
Justin, it's been an absolute pleasure. It always is to chat with you. We just had such a very limited, sort of almost in passing chat in the halls of the conference center in Orlando. But this was nice to have a really sort of sit down, focused discussion on the things that really, really matter in this industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely they do. And I appreciate it. And Heather, I talk about you in almost every session. The fact that you use safety as an owner acquisition tool is a model that others should have. So thank you for everything you do for the industry as well.
Well, thank you for being chief frightener. There is the title for you. We'll put our heads together and think of something. So if you're out there listening to this, we think Justin needs a new title. So let me know, or go to the Facebook group, the Business of Short-Term Rental and Property Management, and let us know what you think Justin should be called. Politely, of course.
Politely, please.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this one.
Alrighty, thank you, Heather.